Hey there, and welcome. You ever stop and think about what the air you're breathing, the water you drink, and even the phone in your hand all have in common? Well, they're all tied to natural resources, kind of like the hidden ingredients that build our entire world. All right, let's get right into it.
So to get our brains warmed up, here's a little puzzle for you. Take a look at these things. You've got a horse, a flower, a mango, and an octopus. Totally different, right? But what's the one thing that connects them all?
If you were thinking they're all natural resources, you nailed it. They are all part of nature's incredible inventory. And, while we might not use an octopus in the same way we use a mango, they all represent this vast wealth of materials that nature provides. Things that we humans rely on to survive and thrive.
But to really get a handle on how important they are, we need to be super clear on what we're talking about. So let's break it down. What exactly makes something a natural resource?
It's actually beautifully simple. Natural resources are just the things found in nature that we use to meet our needs. And we're not just talking about fancy, rare stuff like gold or diamonds. We're talking about the absolute fundamentals. The air for every single breath, the water that keeps us going, the soil right under our feet, plants and animals, the whole shebang.
And you see this everywhere. I mean, just think about farming. It's one of the oldest things we do. We use soil, we use water, we use animals to help us cultivate plants, all to turn these natural elements into the food that ends up on our plates. And then, on the flip side, you've got something totally different, like mining. Here, we're pulling these non-living resources, minerals and rocks, right out of the earth to build our cities, our homes, and all our tech. So from living things to solid rock, it all comes back to nature.
Okay, let's zoom in on one of these resources, one that seems like it's everywhere: water. I mean, we live on the blue planet, right? Well, the real story's a little bit more complicated than that.
And yeah, it's true, the Earth is covered in water, something like 71% of its surface, but, and this is a huge but, most of that is salt water in the oceans. The fresh water that we can actually use is just a tiny, tiny little slice of that pie.
So how tiny are we talking? Well, the amount of that fresh water that's actually available for us to use is this number, just 0.003%. That's it. When you think about it that way, you realize just how incredibly precious and limited it really is. And that tiny number is exactly why human history looks the way it does. All the great ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt, you name it, they all sprung up along the banks of major rivers. It wasn't just for drinking water, it was for farming, for transportation. Access to that tiny sliver of fresh water was literally the foundation for all of society.
Okay, so we've talked about water. Now let's look down at the very ground we're standing on, because it's not just dirt. It's this whole complex system of soil, land, and minerals.
Soil itself is kind of a miracle, really. It doesn't just appear overnight. It's a super slow process that depends on the kind of rock it comes from, the climate, the whole landscape. Get this, it can take 1,000 years to form just one single inch of mature soil. 1,000 years. That makes it pretty much non-renewable in our lifetime.
The land itself kind of does double duty for us. On one hand, it's the surface we live on and farm, right? It's the foundation for our food. But it's also like a container holding all these rich deposits of minerals that we then dig up to build our world.
So what are these minerals? Well, they're these inorganic substances, and we basically split them into two main groups. You've got your metallic ones, like iron, which we use to get, metal, and then you have non-metallic ones, like salt, that we use to produce all sorts of different chemicals.
So we've covered the inorganic side of things: water, land, minerals. But what about all the living resources? Let's talk about the plants and animals we share this planet with.
Just take a look at this map of all the natural vegetation around the world. It's incredible. From these super lush forests right at the equator to the tough little plants in the tundra, plant life is a cornerstone resource just about everywhere. It's adapted to almost every climate you can imagine.
And the amount of stuff we get from them is just staggering. It's woven into every single part of our lives. We eat them, obviously, grains and fruits. We build our houses out of wood. We get medicine from them. We even make industrial materials like rubber and resin. Our entire civilization is just deeply rooted in the plant kingdom.
And of course, we can't forget about animals. For thousands of years, they've been a critical resource. We've relied on them for getting around, for heavy labor like plowing fields, and they also give us a ton of essential products, from meat and milk to leather.
Okay, so now that we've seen what all these different resources are, we get to the most important part of the conversation.
It's not just about what we can take from nature anymore. It's about how we manage that relationship.
And here's the challenge we're facing. As the number of people on the planet keeps growing, and let's be honest, as human greed pushes us to want more and more, we've started to really throw off the delicate balance of nature by overusing everything.
It really all comes down to this one simple but really powerful thought. We depend on nature for so much. And because of that, we have a responsibility to use its gifts judiciously. That means with care, with wisdom, and with good judgment.
So what does that actually look like, using them judiciously? Well, it means taking what we need, not just everything our greed might want. That's the real key to finding a balance where both people and nature can keep on thriving, for generations to come.
And that brings me to my last point, a question that I want to leave you with. As you go about your day, think about the water you use, the power you consume, the things you buy. What's just one natural resource that you could use a little more judiciously, starting right now, today?